Alright, so today we're going to have a very busy day. We're going to do some much needed maintenance and repairs on the van to get it ready for a trip this summer. And if you've watched some of our other videos, remember we've gone to Florida this past winter when we only had the van about a month and we didn't have all of our tools with us, and we ended up breaking down and resorting to going to the dealership and spending $1,200 to get a repair. So this time we're going to show you how to do some repairs yourself and hopefully not have these problems on the road in the future.
All right, we were having a problem with our Sprinter van. We were smelling exhaust inside of the cabin and had the exhaust shop look at it, and there are no leaks in the exhaust. And so that led me to the injector seals. And we've had this off and verified that we have two injectors leaking around the seal on this passenger side, the one in the front and the one in the back. And so we have a set of those to put in, and we're just going to replace the two that are leaking right now. Now we're going to use this screwdriver here. This air cleaner has two shock mounts in the front, and it just pops out of those. And so we're going to pop that up, and then over on this other side, the induction hose going in just pops up out of its framework there. And then there are two rubber mounts that these forks slide over in the back just to pop the whole thing off out of the way like that. So next you're going to loosen this clamp at the other end of this induction hose, right where it goes into the turbo. And we just want to pull this up out of our way. I'll tuck it under there so it's out of the way nice. And now we've got to take off this oil fill neck. All right, it has one bolt in it right here that holds it in. And all these things I've already taken loose, so I'm just loosening them and removing them. And then this tube just comes out of the engine just like that, just like an oil cap would. It's just an extension basically. We're going to set that out of the way. Now we're going to remove this plastic cover here. This just snaps on. It has some little sockets, and there are little pins sticking up with balls that this thing pops onto. We're going to remove it. You kind of have to pull it back over here because you have this long leg that sticks down in a hole in this sound deadening foam here. So we're going to pull this out. We'll set that off out of the way. And then this just lifts up off of the valve cover here. As I'm assuming a sound deadening piece of foam, and we'll have that out of the way. All right, now let me have this to point with here. This is our injector, one that's leaking. You can see these spatters all around here. And there's crusty stuff down at the base of it where it's been leaking, and so you get an exhaust smell because it's blowing kind of compressed fuel air mixture out as it's running, and it is also building up a crust, and when you shut the engine off you'll smell exhaust out here, and with a kind of a diesel mixed in smell. This one's not leaking, but this one is back here. So next we're going to remove this return line for these three and lay it back out of the way. We're going to remove this injector line, and then we're going to pull these two injectors out. All right, you want to be careful with this fuel return line here, this flexible hose. These are actually clips on here. And if you look very closely, they have a little lock and unlock symbol with arrows on them. And so what you have to do is rotate, which we may have to use a little pry on those. You rotate them the way it says, and as you can see, that one's pretty stiff. That one rotated. We got one here that's stuck. And I'm probably going to have to get rebar to do this. Let's see. There. All right, now they're all three unlocked. And then they just pop off. and then we can just kind of set this over here out of our way. All right, here we have, these are 18 millimeter, and we're taking it loose on each end, and there was no pressure spewed out, which was a bit of a surprise. And so we have that loosened out of the way, and right here is a number 40 Torx bolt. These are stretch bolts that had to be torqued and stretched when you put them in to hold this injector in. And you're going to be very careful and cross your fingers that you don't break one of these off in the head, because that's a whole nother nightmare. So here we go. It felt pretty good. It moved. We've soaked these twice with penetrating oil. You have dissimilar metals here. You have a steel bolt and an aluminum head. And if there's any corrosion, we're good on this one. This one's coming right out. If you get any corrosion between the steel and the aluminum, they'll want to seize. And that's why we use penetrating oil. These bolts are long. They have a long threaded end on them, and they're just a really long bolt. And you cannot reuse these. They have to be replaced. That should be just about. I can't see the bolt. I'm just kind of feeling around to get in it here. I need to be up on a ladder if I can see that in here. There we go. There's our first bolt out. You can see the black crud that's been built up where it's leaking around this bolt. And it looks to me like it had anti-seize on it from the factory. Good for them. What holds it in place? That may actually be part of the injector. I assumed it was going to be a forked keeper, but it doesn't appear to be. There it comes. It should wiggle out and come out of there. I think it just has quite a bit of black crud on it. Let me get a pair of pliers to grab that with. And there it is. That's exactly what was going on. It's got crud all around it. That's the black goo. And that's the evidence that this is where it's been leaking. What's giving us our exhaust smell. And so that injector is ready to pull out. And we actually have a special tool to help us do that. Now let's go ahead and get the other one to this end point here. All right, you want to be very careful as you release these lines, just in case you have pressure in here. We might have to get a little different angle on this one. In fact, this one's going to be a little difficult to get to. Yes, it's actually going to be quite difficult. What holds it in? So we're going to release it here. This one was a little tricky to get a wrench on. We've got a little fuel leaking out on this one. You want to watch you don't get sprayed. There we go. We have that out of the way. Now, these clips, you get a screwdriver, a much smaller one would probably be handier, underneath this little gray tab, and you're going to push that up. There, you heard it click. Once it comes up, then you're going to squeeze that. And pull it up. It squeezes right here on the side. You got to squeeze it after you pop the clip and pull it up out of there. So there we go with that. All right. Now let's try to get our second bolt cracked loose. All right, cracked. Let's go back the other way a little bit with it. I'll give it a little wiggle each way. All right, this one's coming out too. There's some horror stories out there on the internet about this particular bolt snapping off. And so that was kind of one of my biggest worries with this job. And I'm really glad to see that they came out without a lot of trouble. Now if we can just get the injectors pulled out, the rest of the job just consists of cleaning out all the crud and getting a nice clean face to put the new copper washer back on. And we had ordered a new tool, a face creamer for truing up the face. Order got canceled, they ran out of them or something. Didn't have time to order another one, but we do have a special puller to pull these injectors up out of there, which can also be a pain if you don't have the tool to do that. And you can find one on eBay. And you can see this one has some crud. It's not near as bad as the other. Here's our second keeper. It doesn't have near as much of the black crud on it. This one hasn't been leaking very long. It'll probably be easier to clean up. So both the injectors are ready to pull. We'll get the puller tool out now and do that procedure. So the special puller I bought didn't fit these injectors. And so we had to resort to old-fashioned methods of getting this out of here, which involved penetrating oil and wiggling the injector, as you see there, that tiny little bit. If they'll move a little bit, then eventually the penetrating oil will get down in there, and you can use, you know, any number of solvents to break up this crusty black stuff. And once it gets to wiggling, you can use the hold down clamp that's around the base of it with a screwdriver and pry it up and down. And once you get this to rotate back and forth, you're going to keep working it and working it and working it until it gets loose. And once it gets good and loose like it is there now, you can go ahead and start applying upward pressure as you twist it back and forth. And you'll pull the nasty thing out of there, because that's what it looks like, all nasty. As you can see, this puller will not fit down over this injector, the way this injector is made. And this plastic is cast on there. You don't take it off. And so there's no way to get it on there, and there was no way to attach this to this in order for it to actually pull. So it was useless. And all of the wiggling and the prying and the soaking that we did to get this out took over 2 hours. And so it's not a quick and easy thing to do, but just be patient, don't break it, and go slow, and just, if you can get it to move a little bit, eventually it'll move a little more. And you can see there's still stuff caked on here really hard. So we'll get it all cleaned off and get it ready to put back together. Here's the other one. You can see this is our second one. You see this little bit of wiggling that we've got going on there. That's how it starts. and that's going to let the penetrating oil get down in around the injector and start to slowly dissolve the crusty black stuff, the carbon buildup that's all down in there. And so, you know, you do this for a little while and you let it sit, and you'll see the penetrating oil disappear, which means it's soaking in. And there's some of the stuff there that's starting to break loose. It's a long, slow process. Won't bore you with the whole thing. When we get this a little looser to where it starts to turn, we'll pick back up and let you get a look at that. Okay, we have our injector has been soaking and wiggling and soaking and wiggling, and now you can see it starting to turn a little bit. And so we're using the tubing attached on there just for something to use to get it to turn. And so we've got it started to wiggle like this, and once it starts doing this, it's getting pretty close to being ready to come out. Alright, then we have this injector fairly loose. It's still not wanting to come up, so we're going to let it soak a little longer. And in the meantime, we have the other one all cleaned up and ready to go back in. I wanted to show you what actually went wrong, what failed. That's this little part right here. This is the copper washer that goes on the bottom of the injector and seals it to the cylinder head right there. And you see the black mark on it. That's where the exhaust was leaking past the copper O-ring. That's what caused all the problem. And here is the injector cleaned up, ready to go back in. It's not spotless, but it's got all the carbon off of it. You can see the side that had the mark on it. It's the side with all the black stuff, because it was spewing up along the side of this in there. Here's the new copper washer, and so we're cleaned up and ready to go back in with this. And we're going to put a little lube on it. And we're going to drop him right back down in the hole here. Right like so. And we have our keeper cleaned up and ready to go back in. You want to make sure that you put the dimple side on top, because there's a tapered head on the bolt that goes in this collar. And we're going to slip that in place. Right like so. Alright, we're back to our second injector now, and as you can see, we've got it loosened up good. It's turning freely both ways, and so now we're going to go ahead and start pulling and work this thing up out of here. There it comes out. Alright, there we go. Well, we've got this injector cleaned up pretty well. We've got the injector hole cleaned up, and everything's ready. We've got our hold down foot, which is kind of a tight fit on this one. And we're going to slip it on. drop her down in there. And got our new bolt. Got our hole cleaned out. You want to make sure you use a Q-tip. Reach down and clean those holes out before you put your bolt in. Make sure there's no liquid under the bolt. That'll mess up the torque. And we want to attach our high pressure line to the fuel rail before we tighten anything up, to make sure that it's aligned just right, because it can move just a little bit with that hold down clamp. So this has got to be right there. And now we're ready to go ahead and tighten that up. And we're going to snug this down and look up some torque specs on these bolts. And then we'll come back and torque and tighten everything up. Alright. Now we're going to torque the injectors hold down bolts. And the specification I found was 60 inch-pounds. And all right, there's our click. And then we're going to go another 90. And that stretches the bolt. Now, I saw 90 and 180. And I'm going to go with 90, because the last thing we want to do is snap one of the bolts off in the head at this stage of the game. And we'll see if we have any problems with it after we get it. There's our click. And there's our 90. So those should be good. We're going to go ahead and hook the injector leads back up. And we're going to go over here. There it is. I guess it needs to go under there. All right. Now we're going to hook our return lines back up. We'll push these on. And rotate them back to the lock position. All right, there we go. Okay. All right, now we're going to go ahead and stick our oil filler tube and our induction tubes back on and put the air breather back on. We're not going to put our cover on here yet because I want to hear it run and make sure I don't hear any sputtering over here on this side. Okay, we're all done. There we go. We're going to start it up. Cross your fingers. little bit for those 2 cylinders to get fuel. It didn't require bleeding or anything. It picked it up by itself. If you don't smell exhaust anymore, then you'll see that.
Letting it run, don't smell any exhaust or any stinky smell.
Check the leaks, make sure you don't see any moisture when they're fitting. We didn't loosen those 2. Back here. All looks good. I would say all right, we've run tested this thing and everything seems to be in order. We're going to go ahead and close it up and put all the components back on and call it a done deal.
All right, we are all done with the repairs and maintenance on our Mercedes Sprinter van that we are preparing for its summer trip. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to our channel to help us get to 1,000 subscribers so we can get monetized and actually earn some money doing these videos so we can buy better camera equipment and sound equipment to help produce better quality videos for you.